Hello and welcome to yet another After Movie Diner movie review video blog, and this will be for obviously everyone watching on YouTube, but also all the members of the After Movie Diner and Dr. Action and Kick-Ass Kid Facebook group. If you wish to join the group, there is a link below, so please do go ahead and do that. We love all movie fans to come to the group. So what 3 films am I going to be reviewing this time round? Well, they're all film screeners that I got through from various different companies. And the first one is, I actually got a DVD, which is really nice. It has Kevin Durant and Lucas Haas in it. And it is Dark Was the Night, sort of a monster movie kind of thing, while also being a bit of a sort of small town drama. That was fun. So that was nice. Comes with a couple of special features as well. So that was good. And then the other 2 were digital screeners. And one was called The Curse of Downers Grove. The most notable thing about that is that it's written by Bret Easton Ellis. And the other movie is called Return to Sender. The most notable thing about that is that it stars Rosamund Pike and Nick Nolte. And they're those movies I'm going to be talking about. So first up, let's start with Dark Was the Night. I enjoyed this movie. It's a good movie. It's about a sheriff of a small town and his deputy, who's just come up from New York City, who both kind of have their own pasts, let's say. I don't want to spoil it too much, but both have issues with their pasts. In the meantime, in a kind of slow burn, slow build type way, there is a monster and or large animal and or something stalking the town. And it's one of those redemptive movies, you know, he's got to slay the dragon to win the princess back kind of thing, sort of. And it's very well done. It was apparently, according to the extras, it was apparently one of the infamous Blacklist scripts. Now, that doesn't mean what it used to mean, which is where they went after writers for being communist. It's now, I don't know how many unproduced scripts. I think it's 10 unproduced scripts, I think. Like, it's the 10 highest, most popular unproduced scripts in Hollywood are put on a list. I think it's 10, I don't know. Anyway, this was apparently one of them. And it's interesting to know that. I mean, the script wasn't the weakest thing about it. It wasn't the strongest thing about it either. I think the performances are definitely the strongest thing about it. And just the way it nicely built, because it was a very, very slow burn without ever really becoming so slow you were like, get on with it. Like, you actually went with the build-up. It's not a particularly long film. It's 90 minutes long. And, you know, I have a feeling that most movies like this, movies called Dark Was the Night, should be 90 minutes long. You should never have a case where these movies rattle on for hours and hours and hours like they do, or like I am now, for example. They should just be, boom, nice, quick 3-act structure, and away you go. And this one was. Great performances by the 2 leads and by the supporting cast, so that's one of the plus points. The second thing is after about the first 10-15 minutes of the movie, I was kind of ready to throw in the towel with the cinematography, because it's meant to be kind of wintry, and it was filmed, I believe, in like kind of cold wintry weather. But they put this kind of blue filter on everything, and I don't know whether the cinematographer did it in camera or whether they did it later with a digital wash, but it just kind of looked a bit awful, and it looked kind of like they hadn't color corrected the footage properly, or they hadn't white balanced the footage properly when they were filming it, or they hadn't lit it properly, and so when they got in the edit suite, they just decided to give it this like bluey greeny wash, which was kind of awful. And it was such a shame, because the pre-credit sequence, kind of the first monster attack thing, is shot really nicely. Like they've got like some overhead shots and the snow coming down and da-da-da-da-da. That's kind of done nicely. But then when it initially kicks into the film, the cinematography is really not up to snuff. And it kind of bothered me and was sort of making me uneasy, and I couldn't kind of get into the movie because, you know, I'll allow a multitude of sins with a low budget production, because if you've got a heart and if you've got tenacity and if you've got creativity, that stuff tends to shine through despite the budget. But unfortunately, especially with sort of low budget horror, we've seen this trend where low budget just means lazy filmmaking. And I was very worried with this that that's what it meant. However, as the film went on and improved and went through, the lighting got better. The interior scenes are lit way better than the exterior scenes. And the cinematographer started to explore other color palettes and other shadows and light and angles and things. And then it became more pleasing again, and you could kind of get absorbed in the performance. You know, a lot of people forget that. You know, they talk a lot about, like, 3D being an immersive experience, or like the depth of field being an immersive experience. The truth of the matter is, it's the script and the performances that are the immersive experience. And what the camera needs to do is, yes, the camera needs to sort of tell the story as well and help the story along. And yes, it can be kinetic and inventive and creative. I mean, one of my favorite films is Evil Dead 2, and that's, you know, Sam Raimi just goes hog wild in that with the camera. But there's like, it's still all servicing to pull you into the movie, right? With Sam Raimi, with Evil Dead 2, it's a roller coaster, right? So you're being dragged along and you're going up and down and in and out and roundabout and watching Bruce Campbell do all this crazy stuff. That makes sense. Whereas in a movie like this that's a slow build, the camera should really not be, when I'm trying to hear what the actors are saying and I'm trying to get engrossed in what the plot is and all the rest of it, and there's, you know, actors are mumbling and twitching and there's exterior noise and da-da-da-da-da, all the rest of it, you know, I don't want to be worried about the fact that the camera's kind of doing this and wobbling around and moving around and whatever. However, at a certain point, they stuck that camera on tripods, they lit it nicely, and I could get into the movie. And I would certainly, out of the 3 movies I watched tonight, I would give this the biggest thumbs up. It's probably a rental rather than a purchase. So I would definitely check it out video on demand. I wouldn't necessarily run down to the theater to see it, but video on demand or Netflix or something like that, this would be a perfectly good, slow build monster movie that focuses more on the drama and the characters of the people than it does on the monster. You do get some monster action, but ultimately, because it is a low budget, because they have other concerns, and also because the script is more about the characters, don't go in expecting carnage. Go in expecting to meet some interesting characters and go with them on the journey of discovering what this monster is. So yeah, I would give this a thumbs up. It's a strong rental, a strong Netflix watch. So I would definitely suggest, if you like kind of low budget but creepy slow burn horror with good characters, kind of like a Stephen King vibe almost, this is the one to watch. Okay, so on to the next one, which is The Curse of Downers Grove. Well, The Curse of Downers Grove is that it's a downer. I mean, it's just a downer, and it's also one of those things where, like, Bret Easton Ellis, his fingerprints are all over this, and that's not necessarily a good thing. The plot, as far as I can figure it, is that there is a town, Downers Grove, where there is a high school where every year, within the weeks leading up to graduation, somebody dies. And they're always kind of noticeable deaths. Someone gets, like, killed by a train, someone else falls off a water tower, car accident, strangulation. There's a whole bunch of, they're like noticeable deaths. They're not just, you know, accidental, but they could equally be accidental. So I was expecting maybe sort of a Final Destination type thing, I guess. Anyway, it's sort of a bit different than that. The movie kind of starts, and it's more about this one girl that we watch, this high school girl who's coming up to graduation, and she's a skeptic about the whole curse thing. Everyone else has kind of bought into it, and she's just a kind of skeptic about it. And it's more of this discussion of, is there a curse or isn't there a curse, and is life the curse, and or is it not, or is there a heaven, is there a hell? It's all these kind of discussions, but in a kind of high schooly way, as if high schoolers talked like 20-something yuppies. You know what I mean? Because obviously Bret Easton Ellis, he wrote American Psycho, and you know, they're all incredibly eloquent, and not in a sort of John Hughesy relatable type way, but more in a sort of edging towards that Tarantino nobody talks like this type way, especially not high schoolers in a town called Downers Grove, I would hypothesize. So you have to kind of tune your ear into this incredibly kind of pompous, weighty dialogue, which sadly the actors do not carry particularly well. As far as I can sort of judge, the casting director simply went out and found the prettiest 20-somethings they could find and put them all in the movie. Being able to act was not high up the list for this particular casting director. If I tell you the one adult character that is in the movie is played by Tom Arnold, and particularly badly, I might add, by Tom Arnold, that kind of tells you something about the casting director, who just went, pretty, yep, get, no, ugly, no, pretty, yep, get, no. I mean, that's really what this casting director did. Because all the people are very kind of like pretty in that kind of should be advertising Gap jeans type way, but actors they are not. So given this big like weighty, meant to be like snarky dialogue, it can be a little laborious at times. However, at no point while I was watching it was I like not watching it, like not going where it was going. And I was interested mainly because, like I said, I'd gone in with this assumption that it was going to be like a Final Destination thing, a bunch of kids in a small town try and like chase death because there's a curse on their high school or whatever, and they think one of them's going to die. And that only serves to, yes, it's hanging over the movie, and yes, there is that constant idea that keeps being brought back, like someone's got to die, and there's this countdown to graduation and so on. But that's not, and yeah, I guess it serves to maybe bring some tension into the movie. But the real thing, you know, that's not so much the mystery. What it is our leading protagonist, the female, goes along with her other female, who's a very kind of party girly type thing, to a seniors party, or a college party. And one of the guys there tries to molest her. She sticks, after asking him several times to stop, she sticks her thumb in his eye, causing to like blind him basically in one eye, and he's was set to be a big sort of football star, like a sports prodigy. So he starts like getting her back in small ways, like he just sort of hangs around and menaces her, and at one point like kills her dog, and another point like breaks her brother's hand, and it kind of escalates, like this whole thing escalates. Meanwhile, she seems, again, the acting is kind of not very good, so I couldn't really tell what she was meant to be feeling, because she just immediately then jumps into another relationship with the greaser kid who like fixes cars at the local gas station, and she starts having some sort of pseudo relationship with him, and life seems to be sort of just continuing with occasionally this menacing stuff. And they go to the police, and because his old man, the guy doing the menacing, because Tom Arnold, his old man, used to be a policeman, of course the police can't do anything, right? So she must be lying and she must be wrong. So there's this kind of idea that like, oh, at some point she's got to defend herself, blah, 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 blah. And it's all building up to this party that her brother and her wild party friend kind of arranged without her knowing. And sort of nothing has any consequence, and nothing has any, like, he kills two of her dogs, and there's no real mourning over the dog. There's like, nothing kind of means anything or feels anything. Things just keep happening. And there's just this over sense of like dread, fueled by, okay, when is shit gonna go down with this guy, but also like, is the curse gonna rear its ugly head? So that's kind of constantly going on. There's this ponderous dialogue, and then it kind of all ends in weird action sequence, and also sort of some attempt to kind of wrap up, like some attempt to do a twist that isn't really a twist. The whole thing, I mean, depending on what your tolerance is for high school movies these days, and bearing in mind I'm in my mid-30s, and although I can still watch John Hughes stuff, I have to say I'm getting to that point where I'm slightly detached now from the kid I was in high school. But depending on your tolerance for high school movies, there's enough going on here that it would keep you entertained. It's shot very nicely. In fact, it's probably the best shot movie out of the 3 that I watched tonight. So it's probably the best shot movie. There's something going on, but I'm not entirely sure that it knows what it is, or that I can explain what it was. There's a lot of those like what I call like CSI flash cuts that are meant to denote like dream sequences or like delirium or whatever, that people just need to stop doing, right? Like going with lots of different cuts in black and white, like doesn't go, oh yeah, I'm in a dream. That's just like, I have an epileptic editor, you know, that's not doing anyone any good at all. And it kind of looks hackneyed as well. Like that's the problem. Like the rest of the movie is kind of shot in a way that it's like, well, this could be any budget, you know what I mean? This could be $1 mil, or it could be 30 mil. Like, it's shot quite nicely, but it's those little like digital effects and digital edits and little like flashes and stuff that makes you think you're watching, you know, a movie of the week on TV. You know, apart from the violence, this could easily just be a silly TV movie on one of the lower end cable channels. But like I say, it might still be worth a watch. I would say a low-end Netflix watch or a low-end Amazon watch if you've really got nothing else going on. But I can't endorse it hugely. Well made, fairly well written, pretty badly acted, and cut out with the stop the crappy dream sequences. Lastly, Return to Sender. Well, tonight's viewing seems to have been a case of diminishing returns. Because I have to say, this one didn't speak to me in the slightest, which is such a shame because I love Rosamund Pike. I think she's a great actress, and again, turns in a phenomenal performance in this film. Like, her performance in this film is terrific, as is Nick Nolte's, actually. I really liked him in the film. The other guy, Shiloh Fernandez, he has a weird young Joaquin Phoenix vibe about him. He does a lot of that sort of mumbly kind of shuffling about mumbling thing, which makes the whole thing kind of, you're like, yeah, I get what you're trying to do, pal, but it's sort of annoying trying to hear what you're saying when you're talking mumbling thing. It works for this character to some extent, but anyway, the plot is a sort of woman who seemingly got her life completely and utterly together, this nurse who has a fairly good relationship with her father, played by Nick Nolte, who is an impeccable cake maker, who has this like perfect little home, and she's trading up for another perfect little home. She has asked to get a job in the hospital of a surgery nurse, so she's trying to like be promoted and stuff within her job. Like, everything seems to be going fine. And one of her friends sets her up on a blind date. And this guy comes to her house, who turns out not to be the blind date, and in a pretty horrible and pretty shocking scene, rapes her. He gets caught, goes to prison. After that, her life starts to fall apart. No one wants to buy her house because of what just happened in it, so therefore she can't sell her house to move into her new house. So she's kind of stuck in this horrible situation of having to live in a house where this utterly atrocious thing and sickening thing happened to her. Because her hands now shake, and because she's obviously a little psychologically tormented, she loses her promotion as a surgical nurse. So that dream is dashed. And various other like little things in her life start to go wrong, and she's not able to kind of hold stuff together. So she seemingly hits upon this idea of writing to and trying to get to see her rapist in prison. This wasn't 100% clear. It also wasn't 100% clear as to whether she, like, who knew about what had happened to her, because her friends at the hospital and her friends in her life generally seemingly didn't know. So it's sort of very odd. Like, on one hand, it's trying to ask us to believe in this scenario. Rosamund Pike's giving an incredibly powerful and realistic performance, yet there are vast chunks in the script where what you would actually do in real life and what she does just doesn't ring true. So she goes to see him, and she kind of starts this relationship with her rapist, who seems to be repentant and apologetic and understanding towards her, But we see in various other scenes in his prison life, he's still a pent-up ball of like tensions and frustrations and anger and various other things. He gets out on parole, and the relationship continues until there is meant to be, I presume, a big kind of revenge-style twist at the end, which kind of ruins, even though the movie is not my kind of movie, right? I don't particularly like these kind of movies where it's all ponderous and serious and disgusting and dark and heavy and is asking the audience to sit there and deal with this ordeal that she's gone through. I mean, it's, you know, I don't find that stuff entertaining. I don't find that stuff appealing. It's not really my kind of movie viewing. But I kind of eased into it, and I was kind of going with it. And I was like, okay, it's doing something interesting here with the idea of relationship. You know, is this a healthier way to mend the situation? You know, is he genuinely going to like repent and go back and become an upright citizen again, and blah 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 blah? And then it all sort of seems to throw that slightly nice idea out the window and just do something that kind of completely undermines Rosamund Pike's character, completely takes away any kind of empowerment or feminism or anything from the movie, leaves the audience thinking things, you know, thinking kind of empathetic thoughts towards a rapist, which they really shouldn't be doing. And maybe the director thinks, oh, aren't I clever making the audience empathize with the rapist? But it's like, well, no, it's just manipulative. Like, movies are able to manipulate you so that if you see a scene between two nice people being all nice and lovely, then you start to like those people. Even if earlier, and it doesn't help either that earlier in the movie when he does the act, he looks completely different. Like, he has long hair and he's wearing different clothes and blah, 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 blah. And it's in a different setting, and it's kind of, you know, understandably horrible and dark and tense and everything. Whereas later, when this ambiguous relationship is forming between the two of them, you know, it's manipulating you into like thinking, well, okay, maybe this might turn out all right, or oh my God, are they going to go away where these two actually become romantically involved? Like, it could go that way, like, you don't know. And it kind of sacrifices any ideas it might have, or any goodwill it might have, or any kind of originality it might have, by just going with some sort of flip ending that's a twist for the sake of being a twist that isn't really a twist, and completely undermines this brilliant character that she's been playing the whole time, and doesn't really make a whole lick of sense, to be honest. So, and then doesn't, just like it didn't explain who knows what about her ordeal and who knows what's going on in her life, it didn't really explain like what she did to avenge herself either. Completely, it wasn't clear. Like, it didn't shy away from showing a fairly disgusting rape scene at the beginning, but then it shied away from like showing violence later on. It was sort of, that was also a weird kind of thing. So I don't know. Very, very mixed feelings about this. It was shot, out of all of them, it's the most like a kind of Lifetime movie. I mean, it really is. It's as if you put Nick Nolte and Rosamund Pike in a Lifetime movie that had a slightly more graphic abuse scene than you would see in a Lifetime movie. Like a Lifetime movie, it would pan away or it would blur out or something. You would know what went on and then it would continue. Well, it was kind of like a Lifetime movie. It really was. It was kind of like, you know, I Befriended My Rapist, the Lifetime movie. And it was a horrible way to end the evening of the three movies that I watched, because each movie got kind of more and more depressing. Which is never good. I'm going to have to watch a serious palate cleanser before I go off to bed, I tell you. Unless it's a case of pure feline curiosity and you want to be like, well, sounds like it could be interesting and maybe John's wrong on this one, then maybe watch it. But sadly, I cannot recommend Return to Sender at all. Despite the great performances, you know, it wasn't for me. I'm just going to leave it at that. I just don't think it was for me. It doesn't really appeal on the level that I like. And the ending which I normally would be all for in a kind of grindhousey B-movie horror way. The first half of the movie was way too much of a Lifetime tedium fest that seemed to be trying to say something that it just doesn't warrant or allow for that ending. It just doesn't. You can't suddenly be like, oh, no, it was a genre film all along. It's like, well, was it though? Bit like Gone Girl, really. That kind of budget Gone Girl. I didn't like that one either. So that was it. That was the 3 movies. And as I said, it was a case of diminishing returns. I think I watched the best one first. Downers Grove, maybe someone else's cup of tea. And I doubt Return to Sender is going to appeal to many. But certainly watch it if anything I've said sounds even remotely interesting. But thanks ever so much for watching again. I'll also be putting up some written reviews of these in the coming days. But thanks ever so much for tuning in. Please, please, please don't forget, tell your friends, tell your enemies, share on Twitter, share on Facebook, retweet. Any way you can, mention the After Movie Diner, www.aftermoviediner.com. Check it out, links are all below. Thanks ever so much, and I'll be back again soon for another After Movie Diner video review.